private sector, actors are sort of driving ahead in the space. You're familiar, obviously, with the work that we do and others. But it's moving fast, right? So we see these kind of global stablecoin arrangements that have reserve models, that have 100% reserve models, that are backed by sovereign securities typically, but it's not yet hey, there's an account with the Federal Reserve, or there's an account with the European Central Bank, and it has a set of supervisory relationships. And I think,
yes.
But this idea of public-private partnership, I think, is really, really critical. And the sort of private sector in technology has shown incredible capacity for innovation and reach and distribution. And if you can marry that to the safety and soundness and the kind of supervisory rigor of leading central banks, you potentially have something quite powerful with that emerging.
Yeah, so that's precisely the idea, Jeremy. Is that we shouldn't stop the innovation. We shouldn't rein in the innovation, but we should make sure that it happens within the confines of a regulated environment. Yeah. I mean, it's great that we have new innovations in payments. We have stable coins that are backed with relatively safe assets, but there's a bunch of different stable coins that are available. Yeah. It's hard for consumers to know which ones are really fully backed, which ones really offer a claim on the underlying reserves, and how liquid and safe are those reserves, and are they liquid and safe in all states of the world? It might work now, but not during a crisis. So there are all these questions that emerge, sure. And that pose fundamental risks to users and to the safety of the financial system. And so the idea is to address those head on, to provide a regulatory environment, an equal playing field for all the innovators, but to allow them to continue to innovate on the technological front, and to allow them to continue to interface with customers, since that's what they do well. Yeah. So that's very much, I mean, you described it very well. That's very much our idea. Now, there are differences, of course, as to how you might design this. And there's a debate as to whether the liability would be issued by the central bank or by the private sector. And so I think that, people used to think about central bank digital currency as something that the central bank would run entirely. Right. That idea is kind of out the door. We've warmed up to the idea of a public-private partnership. Yeah. And the question is how to design that partnership. So along the value chain, from interacting with customers to undertaking customer due diligence, screening customers essentially, to building the interface with which customers trade the tokens, to picking the technology, and that's essentially issuing the token, to conserving data, etc. All these steps are necessary. The question is, where do you draw the line of what the public sector does and what the private sector does? Right. And the fundamental question is about issuance, I think, is does the public sector issue and the private sector distribute, or do we also allow the private sector to issue? Yeah. And I mean, it might, and this is still up for debate. And, your views would be essential for this, because I think one of the objectives is to spur innovation. And the question is, if the public sector issues the tokens and decides on the technology, how much room will there be left of the private sector to debate? So we should have a discussion about this, how to encourage innovation.